So, hello achievers! Today I am with a new amazing expert. He's a neuroscientist. He's Jeffrey Fannin, the author of the website called Enhance Your Brain. It's written just next to me, and he's with me to answer my questions. So, hello.
Pleasure to meet you. Thank you.
How are you today?
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm doing really well today.
And I'm very glad to do an interview with you because you're not only a speaker or an expert or an author, you are also a neuroscientist. So it's kind of a proof about every speakers are saying about. So who are you and how did you start to learn about the brain and the power of the brain?
Well, you know, once I went back to school and got my PhD in psychology, human performance was something that was always very interesting to me. Why do we do the things that we do? And so I taught a lot of neuroscience at the doctorate level and the master's level, and but I still wanted to know more. I wanted to understand. And then I got introduced to what we call brain mapping, taking an EEG, converting it to what we call a QEEG, a quantitative EEG. And that was pretty fascinating for me because we could see patterns in what we call the brain map. And those patterns, we can see things like in my clinic, we work with attention deficit disorder and anxiety and depression. We also work with optimal performance, which is with leaders. We work with athletes, professional athletes, high school athletes, in getting their brain to perform to its best.
Yeah, so it's not only to study their brains, but also to help them to use their brain.
That's right, yeah. Training the brain, it became very important to me. I wanted to, you know, if you just understand the brain, at the end of the day, all you've got is good dinner conversation.
Yeah, it's information.
Yeah, if you can't use it in some way to perform better. And so then we started pushing the envelope. I did a lot of work. I was on a research team from Arizona State University for a number of years, and we did some work at West Point Military Academy looking at neuroscience and leadership. And we looked at things like complexity of thinking and a whole bunch of different things, looking to measure what we might call nebulous kinds of circumstances in the brain. So we wanted to see, is there a connection between leadership and neuroscience? And we found that there was.
Yeah.
There are some definite patterns. So that kind of led me on to other things after I left that project, finished that up, and then began looking at things like consciousness. You know, why do we do what we do? And so I did some research with a colleague of mine, Rob Williams, and we did some measures on changing subconscious belief patterns, because that's something that we all have, you know, from the time we grow up, we have, you know, stuff that doesn't serve us very well. And so we did about 125 cases in this study and looked at, you know, how can, he had a process that had been used for 25 years around the world, still is being used, to change subconscious belief patterns. But
so how we can do that?
Yeah, all they had was anecdotal evidence, you know, stories about how people's lives had changed. So when I came along, we decided, well, let's see if we can measure that. And so we began measuring that. And we found, sure enough, we were able to pick up information and show what this thing called a whole brain state is all about. You know, and so in that research, I was able to coin a phrase that the whole brain state is the gateway to higher consciousness. Well, of course, that begs the question, what is consciousness?
Yeah.
So we began to look at that. And I worked with Dr. Joe Dispenza, and we do a number of events in terms of information to transformation, working with meditators, people who are advanced meditators. And we wanted to see, you know, what does the brain do in some of these circumstances? And we didn't know whether we were going to get anything when we measured it, so we measured it. We did some brain maps, some EEGs, and we found the most phenomenal things. We were also able to measure what we call the morphogenetic field, the energy in the room. You know, when you've gone to a workshop or a seminar and you feel that energy, and how the energy would affect different people and their brains. One of the other things that I've been doing is some research with a Dr. Yuri Krohn, a physicist, looking at what we call subtle energy and its effect on the brain. Now, subtle energy is, we live in an energy field. We are part of that energy field. When you see, for example, a galaxy that's turning around and going round and round, what makes that move? Well, that's subtle energy. So in being able to utilize that, we understand that that's part of what happens in the brain. So you get in this morphogenic field, we feel that exuberance, that inspiration, and we understand in quantum physics things like the quantum entanglement, that things that happen in that field affects everything else. So we began to measure those things, and in these events, we would see pretty amazing things happen as a result of this energy field. For example, we had one woman that had Parkinson's disease, and so we would see the tremors, physically see the tremors, when we measured her before the event began, and also we would see it on the EEG. 3 days later, where the energy in the field was so high, it was very different, that we measured her again, and there were hardly any tremors. You couldn't see it on the EEG, you couldn't see them physically. Then we followed her for about 3 months, and she was able to maintain that, and it had begun to change her life. Her husband said her tremors had minimized, they were hardly there. We had another guy who had a brain tumor, and he went back to get another scan done in the cancer center in Houston, and they told him, you don't need to come back because we can't find it.
Wow. So do you think it's a feature of cure cancer? And
well, it's too early to say. We just don't know. What we do know is all disease is just a dysregulation of energy within our bodies.
Wow.
So a colleague of mine, Dr. Bruce Lipton, wrote a book called The Biology of Belief, and how our beliefs, and a belief is a thought that you have over and over again. So the book that I'm currently finishing is called Help, My Thoughts Are Holding Me Hostage. And in that book we talk about thoughts, how managing our thoughts and our emotions has so much to do about creating our own reality.
Yeah, so what Napoleon Hill said, a lot of speakers are saying, that's true.
That's right, it is true.
And how do you prove that?
Well, that's one of the things that we did at this particular event. We were able to, we took a volunteer and we did that measure. So we measured with their eyes closed, just what does their brain normally do, and then put them into the whole brain state, and then measured that, had them use their intention, the dream, the goal that they had, and then see what is the difference. And we definitely saw some amazing differences.
I saw the difference.
Yeah, and to look at that scientifically, we did what's called an independent t-test. That means that you can take two conditions, condition A and condition B. In this case, their eyes closed and then their brain on this intention, and look at that and say, are there any differences and is it statistically significant? And we found that was the case, that it was significant to the 0.01 level. What that means is that there is a 99% probability that the two phenomena that we looked at are not by chance.
Yeah.
That there is a real difference between them.